My father decided I was old enough to start earning my keep, so he took me to the market to introduce me to the craftsmen he worked with. My father's skill with horses made him an invaluable expert to guide merchants through certain legs of the Silk Road, so he was well acquainted with the best of the weavers, drawers, and iron smelters in China, which in turn were known to be the best among the world. Suddenly I spotted some fellow traders talking in the cool shade to a withered and ancient old man. His skin was fragile and brittle, covered in wrinkles probably resulting from the lifetime of traveling with his herds and flocks until his frailty forced him to settle at a Chinese city. By the looks of him, he could easily have been old enough to have lived in the Jin dynasty, back before the Mongol conquest. Interested by the old man, I eavesdropped on a few words of the conversation and heard something about the Ottoman Turks. My father heard it too. Overtaken by curiosity, my father and I joined the men. "Yeah, I heard that cavalry is unstoppable," muttered a Mongol merchant, his voice filled with fear. "They remind me of us Mongols when we expanded. Do you think they'll rise in power and eventually make their way and conquer us too? Let's hope not. I've heard they are perfectly lethal, and they have no interest in luxury items, which is problematic, considering how we make our livings," said another trader. "How was it last time?" I asked. When the Mongols took over? A long, uncomfortable silence ensued as everyone looked first to me and then at the wrinkled old man, who looked like the most authoritative on the subject of the past. We waited and waited until at last he sighed and began to speak. "I was the grandson of a Liao warrior. I was a man of the Khitans, turned into a refugee by the Jin. My family lived an honest life, working as smiths to make ends meet. When the Mongols first began to overtake the Xia and the Jin, I thought it would be good. Those that had dispatched the great Liao Empire and the kingdom of the great Khitan were about to fall. Indeed, I wanted to fight with them, but then I saw them up close, when they attacked the village I lived in. The horses they rode were far better on the field than any I had ever seen. The horrifying tactics they utilized to install fear and weaken their opponents horrify me to this day. Their strength together was surprising. I had not known. But the great Chinggis Khan had dissolved their tribes to prevent anybody from usurping him, and so they came upon us as one great horde. In essence, they destroyed not just my village, but me. The Jin and Xia followed, along with my Khitan brethren to the west. The Mongols destroyed all they touched and made it their own." Unsurprisingly, when the man ceased speaking, yet another long silence followed. Few people remembered the time before the Mongol conquest. It was rare to find people who remembered the fall of the great Jin Empire. Few members of our community lived very long, and even fewer were able to remember from such long ago. My dad broke the silence and said what was on everybody's minds. "The Ottomans' cavalry is just as good, if not better, than ours used to be. The problem is that our cavalry has never returned to its former glory under Chinggis Khan's leadership. Nobody else had been able to unify the clans, and now that so many of the Mongols had settled in cities, who wants to engage in risky warfare when we can just trade and make a great living on the Silk Road?" Considering what my dad had just said, most people wouldn't suspect his Jurchen lineage. Yet even though he was born after much of the Jurchen's pastoralist ways were forgotten, he was remarkably Jurchen. He was too young to have even experienced the Jin Empire, but the Jurchen blood was clearly evident, especially in the way he could ride his horses. Anyways, instead of trembling in fear when he saw an opportunity with the Ottomans, it was well known that the Ottomans were skilled horsemen. My father saw an opportunity to get better horses for himself from them. Not wanting to miss any opportunities, he told me to make a mental note to keep an eye out for Ottomans whenever traveling.
In the next few days, my dad was off again on another trade venture, but for the first time he brought me along. We rode our horses and led the caravan across roads and dangerous terrain. Between trade cities, we'd pass through temporarily settled areas with various clans of still nomadic Mongols. My dad would point out and explain to me the pastoralist lifestyle. I was fascinated by the dwellings of the Mongol nomads. They were built using sticks. Each house was mostly covered in brilliant white material that hurt my eyes to look at in the bright sunlight. The only part that wasn't white was the top of each house where they had painted vivid pictures. We saw a few. To take advantage of the summer weather, they had hung long strips of meat to dry in the sun. My dad explained how they were in the south right now because it was summer and this was the best pasture land for their flocks and herds to survive from. He told me that it was even more impressive when little villages would form long trails of one clan's carts carrying their houses moving for the winter. See them there? Those are the real Mongols, the ones who didn't settle in the cities of the areas they helped take over. It's said that our Jurchen ancestors also used to live like that, before they created the Jin dynasty. It's kind of sad the extent at which both pastoralist groups have been absorbed into the local culture of their conquests. The times when we come close to understanding our ancestors' lifestyles is in times like this when we are traveling. But even then, we have towns and cities to come along to in our route. As we continued westwards, we arrived at one such city where we encountered a traveling band of 60 merchants from Europe. I noted that they all had long beards and spoke a strange language we had never heard before, but they had one man that spoke both tongues and was able to translate. My father warned me to be wary of these strangers, for they might be bandits pretending to be our friends. As the night progressed, we shared stories and learned that they were on the route to China after hearing of the wonderful things found there. They hoped to learn of new religions, but more importantly, to bring goods back to their home where they could be sold for a profit. The Europeans asked us to describe the lavish cities and towns with large amounts of trains. We told them of the jasper and chalcedony stones found in rivers and plentiful cotton and vineyards. There were two cities in particular we recommended them to visit, Kansai and Taito. Kansai was a city of great wealth with 12 gates and 12,000 bridges, as well as an abundance of food. Taito was the home of the palace of the great Khan. The city was large and wealthy, but most impressive was the palace itself, with a cistern carved from myrticus and bound with gold. They gushed over the wealth of the cities in China under the great Khan. However, they had also heard of the dangers of China and how when the lord of the country dies, there are intervals where Franks and other foreigners enter and traveling on the roads becomes unsafe until a new lord is appointed.
They were very interested in learning about China and my dad's guide services, so we told them a bit about ourselves and our travels. A while into the night, the bilingual hopped out of his seat and approached me. Though I can speak it, I can't read your language, he told me. I glanced at the script he held in his hands, an ancient crumbling letter, I presumed. This is written in the square script, commissioned by Kublai Khan. He tried to unite the many Mongol tongues, but never truly succeeded. Either way, I can read it, I said. It read as follows. Some of us made it out before the Liao fell, but I am stuck as a refugee in a Jin world. The future is bright, though. The fall of the Jin is soon to be upon us, with revolt upon revolt, and soon I can join my brothers in the West. I was the grandson of a Liao warrior turned refugee, and am a Khitan refugee myself. Since the fall of the Liao in 1125, I have been forced to remain under the rule of the horrid Jins, who somehow dispatched our great dynasty built upon the heritage of the great Khitans, of whom I am proud to say I am one. Liao, Khitan, and names far worse have been called, my tribe turned civilization is built on a fighting spirit I have only seen in one other, the Mongols. I hope to one day fight alongside them to dispatch the horrid Jin. The great Chinggis Khan has already begun to lay waste to the Jin, in the same way that he has begun to destroy the western Jia. At times I think of the great destruction my people and the tribe who share ancestry with, and the destruction we have wrought. The Seljuks, a tribe that I have heard of in tales from scholars of my village, have apparently displaced a large dynasty of people based in a land called Arabia. Though I haven't the faintest clue of these people, I need not, for they are people no more, only puppets of the Seljuk tribe. In the year 1071, the year of my father's birth, the great horsemanship of these Seljuks prevailed and laid waste, and the text stopped abruptly there. After hearing this letter and accounts, my father was noticeably more comfortable. Convinced that they were honest merchants, the rest of the night was filled with food and laughter. The following day, we prepared to continue on our own separate paths. Before leaving, my father inquired some of the Westerners. I am interested in the art of horsemanship, and I'm always on the lookout for good horses and learning opportunities. I've heard the Ottomans are quite skilled with their horses. Do you know where I might find them? The Turks are more than just skilled with horses. Their horsemanship is extraordinary, especially in battle where the cavalry is in use. Then they are invincible. No matter the speed or the exhaustion of their horses, every arrow finds its mark. But why do you want to know about them? Replied one of the Westerners. They don't come on the roads. You'd have to go west past the Caspian Sea to even have a chance to see the Turks. And even then, you should not waste your time trying to trade with people who don't trade.